Alright guys, now let's move on to using Redis. Now, let's head over to Spring.io from here. I want to show you this place. Here, you can use Redis just like a regular database. So, you can use it normally for repositories. Of course, you can also use Redis here for different cache mechanisms. Not just for that. You can find all the documentation about this here. I'll basically explain to you how to connect and how to use it in memory. So, let's move on to the code side first. What are we going to integrate? Guys, of course, we first need to integrate Redis here. So, what should you do? You need to add the dependency. So, just like data JPA, you need to add data Redis here. So, I'm coming here now. I'm going to add Redis as Spring Boot data Redis. You can take the example above exactly as it is and add it here. Here, instead of data JPA, you're adding data Redis. I'm going to use this data Redis in the user profile microservice. So, in build.gradle, here, implementation, I'm adding Spring data Redis here. Guys, now, what this means is this. If Redis is being used with Spring Boot data, then you can actually use this Redis, which you'll use in the cache mechanism, as a kind of database as well. So, for example, in the repository part, you can write something like this. What do we usually write in the repository? For example, we say, instead of Mongo repository, write a Redis repository. Use Redis as a database and make it work much faster. You get what I mean, right? Spring actually likes to integrate everything with interfaces, with repository interfaces, to make your work easier, guys. So, now that we've integrated this as well, what are we going to do next? Now I'm going to show you a simple structure. I'm going to write a method here, guys. It's a basic method. I mean, there's not much to it. I say response entity string. Upper name. I want it to be simple, so there's really not much to it. Get mapping. Upper name. Here, I'll take a string name. Return response entity.ok. I say a method called user profile service upper name. And this returns a response to us. Now, let's add this to the service like this. I'll add a method to the service called upper name. All this will do is the following. String result equals name.uppercase. Then return result. Now, of course, when you think about it like this, you might say, "Sir, there's nothing to this. It'll just work right away. You know, this is a simple operation and it'll work instantly." You're absolutely right. My goal here isn't to solve a complex problem or make it do something complicated. What I want you to understand here is this. Does this method always give the same result when the same name is given? Yes, some of our methods are like this. By the way, it doesn't necessarily have to be like this. I mean, think of it this way. Imagine a database. In the database, bring up those whose name is Ahmet. Now, does this request always produce the same result? It doesn't always, but does it produce the same result at certain intervals? Yes. Now, until someone new named Ahmet registers, will it always produce the same result? Yes, it will. In that case, you can cache this, guys. So you can cache this method. Until when? Until someone new named Ahmet is added. What do you do when someone new is added? You refresh the cache. you refresh the cache with the new parameter. After that, you keep going until someone else named Ahmet registers again. Makes sense, right? So you don't necessarily have to back up just the database. You can also back up methods like this, guys. Alright, let's continue. Now, here's what we're going to simulate here. The upper name here ran for a long time. What do you mean? Let me write a try-catch here. Look, what will this process do? It will take my name. It will make it uppercase. It will wait for 3 seconds. Then it will return a response. Look, let's do this and run it right away. By the way, I had turned off the config server. Let's keep the config server running. Let's run the config server. The config server can stay on all the time, guys. After that, let's start up the User Microservice. Nice. Now, let's move on to the user service. A new method will be added here, guys. Yes, something new called upper name has been added. Name, Mohammed. Let's take a look at it from here, please, because we need to see this with our own eyes. I'm going to the Network tab. Now, in the Network tab, look, when I execute this, you can see it sent the request. The request is currently pending, and now it's completed. So, how long did the request take? 3 seconds, 1 millisecond. It took 3.1 seconds. Guys, I'm sending it again. Look, the request again. It took 3 seconds. 3 seconds. Let's move this aside. This way, we can see it easier. I'm executing it again. It took 3 seconds. So, this request gets the same parameter every time. It returns the same response every time. But sir, isn't that really illogical then? I mean, why are we waiting 3 seconds? It should just write this down somewhere. This is exactly the same as the example I just explained. Guys, I'm giving you a task. I'm saying, let's say there are marbles in front of you, all different colors. I tell you, pick out the blue ones and give them to me. Count them. There are 5 blue ones. 5 are okay. Then I mix up the marbles. I ask again, how many blue ones are there? Would you say this to me? Would you count them one by one again and say, there are 5 of them? Of course you wouldn't, because that's already stored in your memory. Here, this process is unnecessarily taking too long, guys. Now, we need to solve this. In other words, it needs to be cached so that when the same parameters come in, it returns the same answer. So, how are we going to do this? How are we going to implement caching? If you're going to do caching here, first you either need to write a special config, either through the config or by coming here. You need to say enable caching. In other words, you need to specify that you'll be using caching in this microservice. That's going to be your first step, guys. After that, for whichever method you want to cache, you'll add the cacheable annotation to that method. Of course, you also give it a name. Like what? Upper keys. So you name it like this, guys. So what happens now? Now, this method of mine needs to be cached on the Redis side. So when I send a parameter, it's going to cache it. Let's see how it works. Let's run it again, because we made a change. I'm starting up the application again. Look, this time, look, I'm not going to make any changes here. See, 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds. I'm sending the same request again. It will take 3 seconds. Guys, why? Because for the cache to work, this needs to happen. First, the method runs. After the method runs, it's cached along with the method's inputs and outputs. When you send a request again, this information comes from the cache. Look, now I fetched it. Can you check the duration? It dropped from 3 seconds to 11 milliseconds. This can vary depending on the current load. Guys, so requests might come in between those times. You can even get a response in 5 milliseconds. This information is also in Redis. It's reading from Redis. Guys, if you want, you can also add this to Redis on the database side. Guys, it should be added from here. Let's come over here. Redis doesn't have a username or password. There's nothing special about it. Let me click on Test Connection. It should connect directly. When I click Apply, it should show up here. Guys, look, when I open it here, just double-click and you'll see it easily. Look, the upperkeys suffix .Mohammed. So when a request comes to the upperkeys method with Mohammed, it returns this response. You can see it here already. Did I make myself clear? So that's how the system works. Right now, we've completed the caching process. Guys, okay, teacher, fine, you've cached this, but let's say this cache needs to be cleared. I mean, I want to clear this cache. Or, now, there's another situation. Here, while you're storing the data, you kept it for upperkeys, for example, for Mohammed, upperkeys Ahmet, upperkeys whatever. So, how do you clear caches here? All caches, for example, or a specific cache. How do you clear it, or according to what? Now, if you want to perform operations related to the cache here, friends, including clearing it. First, you add something here. You add a cache manager. Cache manager is a class you'll use to manage your cache. Let me show you some examples here. Let's say public void clear. Let me call this clear cache. So, what exactly do you want to clear here? For example, cache manager. For example, I want to get the cache whose name is this. What is ours? Upperkeys. What do I want to do with this? I want to clear it. Then go ahead and clear the cache. So, you can manage it like this. Not just the entire cache. There might be a specific keyword inside this cache. You can clear that. You can also set up their timing. You might want it to be cleared at certain intervals. You can set these up on the Spring side with scheduled tasks, with cron jobs. There are many methods you can use here, guys. Here, I'm explaining to you the basic starting logic of Redis. Starting from here, you can now integrate Redis however you want and use it easily. As I said, you can actually use Redis as if it were a database. It can also be used that way by integrating the repo. Guys,